If you apologize now, I'll act like none of this ever happened," Randone said, his tone laced with condescension. "There's no need to risk your life over something as trivial as pride." Theo smirked, his confidence unwavering. "That's exactly what you should be saying. If you don't want to end up a one-armed swordsman, it would be best for you to accept that you've been fired." Randone's expression darkened. Fury flickered in his eyes as he snarled, "You're really going to keep this act up to the very end? I was going to let this slide because you're so pitiful, but now I see that won't do. I'll kill you and just call it an accident. The outcome of this match is already decided, so there's no issue here." The duel began with Randone offering Theo the first strike, his overconfidence on full display. Theo charged in, and their swords clashed with a loud metallic ring. The trainees, who had been murmuring moments before, were instantly captivated by the scene unfolding before them. From the outset, it was clear that Randone held the upper hand. His strikes were precise, relentless, and forceful, while Theo appeared to be barely holding on. It seemed like all he could do was block, each attack forcing him back step by step. Randone chuckled mockingly, his voice dripping with contempt. "What happened to all that confidence, boy?" he sneered. "You couldn't do anything against me, yet you dared to look down on me." This outcome was obvious. He scoffed, shaking his head. "You're not even a low-ranked swordsman, just a pitiful apprentice. Sure, your skills have shown some strange improvement lately, but they're nowhere near enough. If you were at the level of one of the 4 Hounds of the North, that might be a different story. But there's no way someone like you, a failure of Ragnar, could ever defeat me." The scene shifted, flashing back to the moment Theo confronted Evelyn after she had suggested the duel. "What were you thinking?" Theo had demanded, frustration evident in his voice. Evelyn remained calm, sipping her tea before answering. "It was an act of goodwill," she explained. "If you want to cut Randone off completely, you need to be thorough. Someone like him doesn't act alone. He's clearly being backed by someone." Surprised, Theo asked how she knew this. Evelyn gave him a knowing look. "Once I saw him teaching you that awkward sword style, I had someone investigate him. The way he was training you, it wasn't just wrong, it was deliberately excessive and ineffective. That kind of incompetence couldn't go unnoticed." Theo felt a flicker of anger. In his past life, Evelyn hadn't caught on to any of this, but now, because of the incident with his Manhwa, she seemed to have taken a keener interest in him. Evelyn set her tea down gently before continuing. "Every trace of Randone leads back to a single place, the Camellia Palace." Theo's eyes widened in shock. "This is all because of their miserable war for the throne?" he asked, anger swelling within him. Evelyn gave a slight nod. "It's possible," she admitted, her tone measured. Theo clenched his fists, but quickly forced himself to calm down. He was still amazed by how much Evelyn had uncovered, yet he couldn't ignore the reality of the situation. "Even with this information," he said, "I can't beat him with my current skills. What's your plan now?" Evelyn smiled, a quiet confidence in her expression. "You're underestimating your potential," she said simply, leaving Theo to wonder what exactly she had in mind. Back in the present, Randone, now desperate, charged forward, swinging his sword recklessly at Theo. "If you kneel now, I might just forgive you," he taunted, his voice dripping with overconfidence. He swung his sword down heavily, aiming to crush Theo's resolve. But Theo blocked it effortlessly, his stance unwavering. There wasn't even a hint of strain in his movements. Randone froze for a moment, confusion washing over him. How was Theo blocking all his attacks so easily? This wasn't the same weakling he had been teaching, or rather manipulating. Growing frantic, Randone unleashed a relentless flurry of attacks. Yet every strike was met with a precise, almost casual block. From the sidelines, Remington stood among the trainees, his eyes widening in disbelief. "He's not being pushed back," he whispered, the realization dawning on him. Evelyn, standing calmly in the crowd, smiled. She had been confident all along. 1 week of her personal training, she had assured Theo, would be more than enough to surpass someone like Randone. After all, Randone was nothing more than a pathetic excuse for a swordsman. Theo couldn't help but grin. The situation had turned out even better than he had hoped. Having Evelyn on his side had proven to be an invaluable advantage. But one question lingered in his mind. One he had asked Evelyn during their preparations. Why was she helping him so much? Her answer had been straightforward. While part of it was due to the events surrounding his mana hall, there was also another reason. She knew someone who was obsessed with finding and gathering talented individuals. Meanwhile, Randone's panic grew. His thoughts raced, his confidence crumbling. Theo shouldn't have any talent, he thought desperately. Has he been acting this whole time? Breaking Randone's frantic thoughts, Theo's voice cut through the tension. Who's backing you? Randone stammered, caught off guard. What are you talking about? Theo's expression was unimpressed, his tone steady. Did you really think I wouldn't notice you've been giving me worthless lessons on purpose? Camellia Palace, perhaps? The moment those words left Theo's lips, a chill ran down Randone's spine. How did Theo know? The fear in his eyes was answer enough. Theo's smile widened, pleased by the confirmation. So you are being honest, he said calmly. His voice then took on a sharper edge. Tell me, do you know what it feels like to have your arm chopped off in an instant? Before Randone could react, Theo dashed forward, his blade slicing through the air. In one swift motion, Theo severed Randone's arm. Randone's scream tore through the training. Grounds as his severed arm fell to the ground, blood pooling beneath it. He collapsed, clutching the stump where his arm had once been, his face pale with horror. For a brief moment, the crowd was silent, frozen in shock. Even Remington, usually composed, was taken aback by the sudden turn of events. Theo stood over Randone, his gaze cold and unyielding. The chaos around him faded as he focused solely on the man writhing at his feet. His thoughts were calm yet resolute. I've definitely gotten stronger, he realized, and there's still so much more room to grow. He crouched slightly, meeting Randone's terrified gaze. His voice was low, almost a whisper, yet it carried the weight of his conviction. It's your fault this has happened. Randone, panic-stricken, stammered, What are you talking about? Theo straightened, his blade gleaming in the sunlight. It's your fault you're dying here today, he said, his voice unwavering. Of all the Ragnars who believe in the rule of the strong, you are the weakest. These were the exact same words Randone had spoken before killing Theo in his past life. Desperation filled Randone's voice as he cried out, Wait! But it was too late. With one swift strike, Theo's blade cut through the air, and in an instant, Randone was no more. His head separated cleanly from his body, falling to the ground. Randone's final sight was the surreal image of his own lifeless body collapsing, his blood pooling beneath it. The duel was over. The trainees stood frozen, their faces pale with disbelief. An apprentice swordsman, someone they had mocked and underestimated, had just defeated a mid-tier opponent like Randone. Murmurs spread through the crowd like wildfire. How did he do that? One whispered. That shouldn't have been possible, another said, his voice tinged with awe. Theo didn't seem to notice. His gaze remained fixed on Randone's lifeless body, his expression cold and unreadable. He muttered to himself, almost as if speaking to the past. So weak. Disgust filled his voice, as he remembered how this man had once been the cause of his suffering. But now things were different. A soft chime echoed in Theo's mind as the system window appeared before him. The notification was clear. Quest complete. Third tutorial quest. Alongside. It came a reward, an extra ability called Observation. Theo's brow furrowed slightly as another line of text appeared. A year's worth of magic power restored. Confusion mixed with intrigue as he pondered over this new ability. Observation? He wondered, trying to piece together what it could mean. Before he could dwell on it further, a sudden, overwhelming pressure filled the air. A shadow descended from the sky, moving faster than the eye could track. The ground trembled as the figure landed behind Theo with an explosive force, the impact shattering the earth beneath him. Dust and debris swirled in the air, momentarily obscuring the figure's identity. Theo turned, his body tensing instinctively as he recognized the man standing before him. The aura radiating from him was suffocating, its intensity like nothing Theo had ever felt. There, in the center of the devastation, stood Julius Ragnar, the demon dragon himself. Clad in his signature white armor, he exuded a terrifying mix of authority and raw power. The commander of the white-armored dragon cavalry had arrived.